Hello, Garland Nixon here, and I think we need to talk about the politics that or how politics will be affected by the Seymour Hersh revelations. Let's talk. Hello. The politics of the Nord Stream attack. Let's talk about that. And let me start by saying this. I am so glad that I don't study the non-existent philosophy of Zen. And if you understand Zen, you understand what I meant when I said that. Of course, I don't study Zen because there's nothing to study and there's nobody to study it. But so let's talk about this, and that the perspective I have is this. And why did I start off by saying, why do I not study? Because I don't know who I am. If I knew who I was, I could tell you, but I don't know who I am. So why do I not study the non-existent philosophy of Zen? Because what Zen gives you is this: it gives you the ability to escape your culture, right? And that's very important when you've been indoctrinated into the Western culture that says, reason. We must reason our things out of everything. We must use facts and we must use reason and reason our way out of things. There's a problem with that, and that is that what you're really doing is you're only counting on. Let me put it to you like this. Let me put it this way. Your consciousness, I can put your consciousness two ways. And that would be like, think of a light, your spotlight consciousness, right? That's what you see. That's that little thing that's looking around, that's always searching for danger, right? Yes, you're awake and you understand it and you're looking around, and that's your spotlight consciousness. That's the consciousness that looks over and sees something and picks it up, right? But then we could also call your floodlight consciousness. That's a consciousness also. And here's what I mean. You're driving home and you drive home the same way every day, or you drive to see a friend. It's 3 hours away and you go there every weekend or every couple weekends, whatever the case may be, right? And you notice something. You leave home and you fall into a daze when you're driving. And you don't see the world, but now you react to everything around you, but you think about things. You think about what you're going to be doing when you get there. You think about somebody that got on your nerves. You go off into a whole different mental world while you're traveling. But that floodlight consciousness is still focusing on what's happening. If a car jams in front, jams on brakes in front of you, you do jam on brakes. There's a consciousness. So you're able to focus on other things, think about do other things, and do all these other things. And that floodlight consciousness is still there. When I was in law enforcement, I'll give you another example. When I was in law enforcement, I can remember this. And a lot of cops know this. Let's just say, not saying it happens, but let's just say, for the sake of argument, in theory, that police officers at some time, be they on a car or a police boat or whatever you're assigned to, were to pull their car in a very darkened place, away from everyone. And let's just say for a few minutes, that officer's eyes were to close and he may fall asleep. A lot of cops know this. Let's say, I can remember this when my number was 3231. Let's be honest, go dead asleep. And they could call 3234, 3236, 3238, and I'd still be dead asleep. And if they said 3231, boom, my eyes would, and I'm dead asleep. I'm dreaming about God only knows what, right? 3231, boom, I'm awake. My brain, when I was asleep, could discern, dead sleep, could discern between my call signs and another sign. And if my number was called, it would wake me up. If another call was, well, it wouldn't, right? What is that? That's that spotlight consciousness. That's a consciousness that you don't necessarily understand as well, but it's there. When you're asleep, it's listening for things. That's the consciousness when you're standing there and you feel somebody standing behind you, like you're being stared at. You turn around and there's somebody there. right? That when you're like, I wonder whatever happened to old Joe. I miss old Joe. Me and Joe used to go fishing together. Good old Joe. And the next day, Joe calls you and you're like, oh, God, I can't believe it. Joe, what the hell? I haven't seen you in years. That's that consciousness that's connected to everything. That's that consciousness that's real, that in Western society where we are trapped by the belief that spotlight consciousness as the only consciousness, and that we can reason our way in and out of everything. We're trapped by the belief in reason, not by reason, but by the dedication and belief to reason, and spotlight consciousness, reason only. We're trapped by that. That inhibits our ability to understand things. And in studying Zen, well, because there's nothing to study, but if there were, and nobody to study it, you would start to realize that you have other senses and that consciousness is not as you understand it. One might argue that we don't have consciousness, that consciousness is all around us and we access consciousness. We as human beings have the tools, the antenna to access consciousness in the universe, right? That's another argument. But whatever the case may be, that you can understand and think things and figure things out without having to consciously do it. You ever heard somebody say, look, I don't know what to do. I'm going to sleep on it. What does that mean? And they wake up in the next morning refreshed and they say, I'm going with this. Why? What did they do? They shut down and they said, I'm going to allow my mind to find an answer and get out of its way, and it will find an answer. Right? Okay. Why do I say all that? I say that for a very good reason. Because I've been talking to friends about this whole Hirsch thing, right? And I thought, okay, I can consciously reason it out, and I can consciously say, you know what, they get along, because this is what people say: they always get away with everything, and the media is not going to cover it, and it's just going to go away, and this is just going to be another big nothing burger, and this is the biggest story, one of the biggest stories in American history, and it's just going to be thrown aside. And I thought to myself, okay, my conscious reasoning mind, my spotlight conscious reasoning mind says the same thing. But my intuition says something very, very differently. My intuition tells me that this is going to be far bigger, that this is one of these things that chips away at the foundation of something, right? And here's what I mean. And when I intuitively feel that this is really big and that this is going to be a game changer, maybe not overnight, but over the next 6 months to a year, over time, this is going to be a game changer. Because it's like if you have a relationship with somebody, a friend or whatever, and you do certain things, there's certain things you can do that will cause that. And we've all had that, right? Whether a relationship, whether it's a loved one, sometimes a family member, sometimes somebody that was a friend for years, right? Or whatever the case may be, and they do something, and you have a certain relationship, and then they do one thing, and that one thing can never be fixed. That thing, you're like, I never thought he or she would do something like that. But now that you'll know it, they will, it reveals their character, and you can't pull that one back. It's like throwing an interception. Once that ball leaves your hand, basketball, throwing a bad pick that gets picked up, throwing a bad pass that gets picked off, whatever the case may be. Baseball, throwing a bad pitch. Once that ball leaves your hand, you can't get it back. And the ramifications are there. And this is something that has happened. And mind you, my argument, I believe, and I read something today online that caused me to feel this way again, and that is, and I'm going to get into all of this, but I'll just say this. As I believe this came from the Pentagon. I became mostly from the Pentagon, from deep state. And I believe that soldiers, they don't shoot once. They fire at their target. They do some surveillance. You fire a missile and you need surveillance to come in and look. Did we destroy the target? No. Fire another missile. Fire something else. Fire some more something downrange. We got to stop. Don't stop until this target is annihilated, right? And intuitively, what I feel from this is that there are forces, and they mentioned Biden, they mentioned Sullivan, they mentioned Newland, they mentioned Blinken. What do we know about those four people? My opinion is they're psychopaths, that they're very sick people, and they're very stupid people. And those two things go together. That these are people without empathy. These are psychopaths that feel entitled and power hungry, and that have no regard for the lives of other human beings. And they're very stupid people in that they believe that they're so entitled that they can do anything and get away with it. And they believe that they're at the helm of this powerful um, 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 machine, and that this machine is so powerful that nobody can stand up to it. They're drunk with power. And so they're unconcerned about the people around them. It appears that one of the things that happened was that there were people in the deep state telling this cabal, this ain't a good idea. This is really stupid. Don't do this. This could come back to bite us. And they just ignored them, telling them, you better keep your mouth shut. Don't go out telling people. And they were out running their mouth everywhere. I am convinced at this point that they were running their mouth everywhere. And one of the things that convinces me is hearing all of these members of Congress. Dan Cohen has a great video, and he's got all these members of Congress that are implying that they will destroy it. They're saying we will use all means necessary to take it out. We should use all tools at our destruction. At our all tools available, etc. They're making it clear. Members of Congress, John Bolton, a lot of neocons are making it clear that there was a discussion going on about using brutal violence and launching a military attack against Germany. It's clear and obvious, which tells me again, the people in the deep state who were opposed to this, they were not just opposed to it, they were extremely opposed to doing it and being blatant about it. But the neocons are psychopaths, and psychopaths always want to take, serial killers always want to take responsibility for their murders. So the people here who released this information, Cy Hirsch said there will be more bombshells coming. And what he said was, this is only first base. Exactly what I thought. The people who are doing this will not stop. I think they're out to destroy this cabal of neocons, and I don't think they'll stop until they do it. So we'll see. I think they're going to release information on these people. I think they put themselves in a bad position. They've been so arrogant. They pissed off the wrong people this time. And I think they're going to pay a dear price. Keep your eyes and ears wide, because we're going to hear a lot about this. And there's going to be some things that are come out. They released this, and what are they doing? As I said, they struck the target with a missile. Now they're sitting back and they're doing some reconnaissance to see how much damage it did. And if they don't feel it didn't do enough that damage soon enough, they're going to launch another strike. And based on what Hirsch said, there's more coming, and it ain't going to be long. And there ain't nothing they can do, because if they were to take out Hirsch, they'd go find somebody else. These people are determined. And there's a war going on inside, my friends. There is a war going on inside the machine. And there's they got their crosshairs on that crazy neocon cabal. So let's see what happens with that. Now let's continue. Now that I've kind of laid some groundwork of where I'm coming from politically, let's go there. Why do I have this intuition that this is a biggie? Because of what it does. The foundation of empire, whatever you want to say, imperialism, empire, the world hegemon, right, is this. There's a foundation to this U.S. exceptionalism, this concept of exceptionalism. And it is this, that the U.S. can do whatever they want anywhere in the world, that they can use any manner of coercive measures, any place, anytime, anyhow, that they can use, whether friend or foe, that they have the authority to tell everybody what to do, and anyone who does not deserves the discipline they're going to get. And anyone who deserves, who won't go along, I tell you what to do and you don't do it, I'll do it myself. Don't make me do it myself. I'll do it myself. That is the foundation of U.S. hegemony, U.S. empire, U.S. Manifest destiny. We're doing God's work, dude. We're doing God's work. God has put us in charge, and we got a right to do anything we want. So the foundation of the U.S. hegemonic relationship with the world is the right to use coercive measures as we deem fit. Now, there's a problem with that. You have set up that rule. That's what Tony Blinken means when he says the rules-based international order. An order. Remember, they're always talking about an order. And I always say, I'm a guy that I don't believe in law and order. I believe in justice. Because it was at one time, it was in Germany, it was legal it was illegal not to turn in your neighbor if they were a Jew. At one point, it was if a slave ran away in America, it was illegal not to turn the slave back in. So that the fact that a law exists does not make it just. Order, well, guess what? In a feudal society, there is a very clear class and caste and economic order. It is unjust. So this idea of law and order does not imply justice. I believe in justice, not law and order. So the rules-based international order, what is not discussed with Tony Blinken's rules-based international order, because part of this discussion is this: what do you base your rules on? Do you base your rules on the UN? Do you base your rules on international law? Do you base your rules? And then they'll ask Tony Blinken, what are those rules? Sergei Lavrov has said, you said there's a rules-based order and I can't find the rules. No matter how much I ask, I can't find the rules. But that ain't the real question. Regardless of all that, here's the real question. Are those rules just? Whatever they are, wherever they are they just? Do those rules create a world, a society, an order that's just? And what would that be? Everyone has the same expectation of rights. That would be a just order. An unjust order would be, depending on who you are, you have a different expectation of rights. In the case of the United States, they'll say they're showing their hand right now. NATO's showing their hand. They're saying things that they do that it's terrible that Russia did. You can't invade another country. You can't. I can. You can't. See, the rules-based international order means there is an order. I have an expectation based on my perch in the order, based on where I sit at the top of the order. I have an expectation that I can invade any country I choose anytime I want. You don't have those expectations because you're not as high up on the order as I am. And guess what? I created the order and I maintain the order through coercion and violence, through economic coercion, through military coercion. Anyway, I maintain the order. I created an order that benefits me. I maintain the order using coercion and violence. And I argue that this is the only order that we should have. But the question becomes, is the order just? Well, clearly it's not just. Clearly it's not just if the United States can make up any reason to attack Iraq or Libya or Syria or Afghanistan and do it, and then say to someone else, you can't, and that we can overthrow the government of any country we want, and then say, you other people. I mean, the reality, I don't think anybody should be able to do it, but that we can do it, and then tell somebody else they can't. And NATO can act as though, and then we can lie and act as though we don't. No one should be able to do it. So I can now create a false reality where I don't even do it, even though everybody knows that I do. So that's not a just world order. The rules-based international order is simply the U.S. saying we are the world hegemon. We make the rules, and it's unjust, but it benefits us. But the foundation of that is we make the rules and we can do anything we want, and we determine the rights of other groups. And we can give them more privileges or less privileges, depending on what our whim is on a given day. But we determine it all. And if you don't like it, we can kill you. It is a mafioso. It is a criminal order, an organized crime. And it ain't as organized as it used to be. Now, what has happened is, at the foundation of that order is, it's like, think about a society. What keeps a government in power, really? What keeps a government in power is they reserve the right to use violence and force. And so the government says, I can send the cops to grab you, beat you, shoot you, or whatever, but you can't send a bunch of guys can't come to the state house, to the governor's house mansion, and kill me. The state reserves the right to use violence. You don't have that right. That's what maintains the government. That's the idea of a government. And I mean, now what the U.S. says is the world is a giant state, and we reserve the right to use violence at a whim, but nobody else can do it without our permission, and nobody else can do it unless it benefits us, right? That's it. That's the foundation of it. Here's the problem. That requires, because it is a fraud, it requires a false reality to be maintained. And that's that the United States is a benevolent force. You'll see the advertisements, join the U.S. Navy, a force for good. There is a false reality a false paradigm that must be maintained, that we are benevolent. We can't just say we have a rules-based international order. And the reason we do that is so we can do anything we want and nobody else can. It's purely and absolutely selfish. It's purely narcissistic. It allows us to use violence, coercion. It allows us to starve people. It allows us to do whatever we want to take and control the resources of the world. We can't just say that. We have to say we're bringing democracy to people. We're saving people from their dictator, whatever the case may be. We got to lie. But we got to maintain that lie. Now, what has happened is this. NATO is a word. What if somebody says to you, what is NATO? It's a noun. That's all it is. NATO is a noun. Nothing else but a noun. Why? Because you and I don't study the non-existent philosophy of Zen. Here's what we know. There's a difference between a symbol or a sound and what the symbol or sound is referring to. We know that if you use the word tree, there's a difference between the word tree and that thing over there that sound is pointing to, is representing. When I say the word tree, you have a vision in your mind of what that word represents. That word is not that thing. There's a difference between the sounds and symbols that we use in the world and the things in the world, in the universe, that those things refer to, right? So when we use the word NATO, that's nothing but a noun. The question is, what does that word refer to? And that's why this is so important. That's why my intuition tells me this is major and it can't just go away, because it exposed the truth about that word. When we say the word NATO, we have a false paradigm. The word NATO, Garland, what does the word NATO mean? Oh, it means an alliance of allies, right? An alliance implies allies. Alliance, allies that work together for a common cause, for the good of all, for the benefit of all. And mostly it implies that to the east, there's a large country called Russia. And that country is scary to us. That country is violent. That country are savages. We must be afraid of them. They are poised to attack us at any time. That they're just violent Slavs and they're ready to come after us at any time, and we must be frightened of them. They're not rational. They're vicious brutes, right? They're not rational people. Vladimir Putin's not a rational person. Why? Because none of the Russians are rational. They're irrational creatures. You see, this paradigm doesn't work if Russians are rational people. And if Putin's not a madman, this paradigm doesn't work. So for this paradigm for NATO to be what we're saying it is, Russia has to just be a bunch of violent madmen who want to attack us at any time, number one. And NATO has to be a collective group who are together to protect themselves from a potential aggressor. These things must be true. They must be an alliance who work together for the benefit of all, with a focus on protecting themselves collectively, coming together like a hand into a fist, right? To protect themselves from a potential aggressor, and that aggressor would be Russia. Now, they had a problem. In order to maintain that, Russia could not build alliances with, number one, the most powerful economic country, the second most populous country in Europe, Russia being the most populous and Germany being the second most populous. 25%. Germany's, I don't know what it is now, but it was 25% of the EU's economy, right? In order to maintain the facade that Russia is a danger and that we must all stay together to protect ourselves from Russia, Germany and Russia could not ally economically, because that made it considerably more difficult to maintain that facade. And sooner or later, we knew it would fall apart. If they started working together, it would become more and more and more. And Germany and Russia would both become more powerful. Russia's already growing to be more powerful, but Germany would become more powerful, much more powerful. And as Germany became more powerful, then they would be less likely to accept our domination. So this was a self-centered racket. That's what NATO is. So as I've argued for a long time, what NATO really is, not what we're told it is. It really is an umbrella organization that the United States brings together so it can assume um, power of attorney over Europe's um, foreign policy. And of course, the EU is the same, so they can have power of attorney over Europe's cultural and economic policies. The NATO is there to maintain a rules-based international order. In other words, a hierarchical system where the United States controls all of the EU and does whatever it does to ensure that that neither Russia nor Germany or any other country get powerful enough to challenge its edicts, to challenge its hegemony. Now, so what do we have here? We have a contradiction. We have the definition of NATO as we are told, as we are instructed to believe under the rules-based international order, right? We have the cover story for NATO. We have the exoteric story. The outside story is we're there to do good and to protect your people from Russia, and we got an alliance. The esoteric or inside story is we're there to maintain order and to keep everyone at bay, to follow our instructions and to do what we tell them to do, and never, ever, ever for them to rise to be powerful enough to challenge us in any way. If you see a pattern, that's the United States' entire pattern worldwide, to maintain power over the world and ensure that no country can become powerful enough to challenge them in any way. That's why they don't want anybody to have nukes. That's why this big idea to stop all countries, and no country can have a nuke. They don't want, the US really wants to be the only country with nukes. Why? Because that gives us more power. If you don't have nukes and we got them, we got more power. We got to stop you from having nukes. Why? Not because you're going to attack anybody, not because they truly believe that Iran's going to get one nuclear weapon and immediately fling it at Israel, who has hundreds of nuclear weapons. That's absurd. But because if Iran gets one nuclear weapon, then the US feels that it won't have the hegemonic ability to completely control Iran. Iran won't have to listen to us anymore. And that dynamic applies to NATO. So let's get back to the fallout. Let's get back to the political fallout here. Now, what has been exposed is the truth about NATO. If you look at what happened, and it is undeniable, the media can cover it up, but it don't matter. The media cannot cover it, but it don't matter. This is so volatile, it's leaking. It's leaking everywhere. It's leaking on Twitter. It's leaking on social media. It's leaking on alternative news. There's no way that they can keep this down. And now what has it done? It has exposed the truth. It has exposed the esoteric. It is exposed that what we're told about NATO is a cover story. So what do people know now? They know the truth, which means the dynamic and the order that you had now cannot continue to exist. Why? I don't know. But intuitively, I feel like this. If I think you're my friend and you're looking out for me, we can continue to hang out, go to a bar on the weekend, have a drink, whatever, you're young, chase the ladies, whatever you do, right? But once you realize that this dude is scheming on you, that he's plotting on you, you can't do that anymore because you can't turn your back on him. You don't trust him anymore. It's over. The relationship you had will never be the same. It's intuitive. Who doesn't know that? You got a friend, you're hanging out, your bed friends, whatever. Oh man, you guys go to football games, you do everything, and you find out he's scheming on your girl. He ain't your buddy like that no more. He's scheming on your girl. That ain't cool, right? And lots of people have had that happen. Never had the same relationship before. I mean, again, right? So it's a dynamic. I don't care what you do. You can try to think your way around it. You can say, oh man, the dude just had a couple drinks. You can say this or that, whatever. But you can't get out of the reality that he was scheming on your girl. And you'll never get over that. And your relationship will never be the same with this dude, right? This guy, somebody put, Tim said it's leaking like a blown up pipeline. Exactly. This thing's leaking. The truth is leaking out. You can't stop the signal, brother. So what's going on now is this. Now that this is out, the reality to Germany is this. Number one, the United States claims to be on our side. They attacked us. Joe Biden, I mean, and it's out. Joe Biden basically said, and Hirsch said it, he decided he'd rather see the Germans freeze than not go along with what he wanted. He'd rather see them suffer than not go along with what he wanted. So he had no empathy towards the Germans. Is that an ally? No, it's not. So the Germans know that the United States is not their ally. The U.S. attacked them, but the Germans know something else. It's pretty clear that Norway was involved, but let's face it. So if we read the article, we do know that Germany was involved. We know that Sweden, and we know that Norway was involved. We know that Sweden and Denmark were told something. And we know that after they were told something, whatever cover story they were told, okay, let's say right then they weren't told that this pipeline was going to be blown up, but they were told something. And then the pipeline blew up, which means at minimum, as soon as it blew up, they knew what happened and they kept their mouth shut. And it's more likely that they were told the reality of what was going down. We also saw Radoslaw Sikorski, the former Polish, I don't know if he was defense minister or foreign minister, tweet, thanks USA, so the Poles knew. Now, we were told a while back that true, false, I believe it, but that Liz Truss's phone was hacked, and that she, right after it happened, she tweeted Blinken and said, it's done. I believe that. So what Germany knows is, A, the U.S. attacked them, but B, they ain't got no friends around. That all of their buddies around were scheming on them. They were like, hey, thanks a lot, Norway and Sweden and Denmark. We're all good friends. And they were like, yeah, we sure are. And while they were telling that, they were plotting on you. They were plotting on you. So let me ask you this. You're Germany. You trust any of those countries anymore? You also, Germany, know this, that Norway was willing to feed on your corpse. That Norway, not only were they willing to feed on your corpse, they were willing to help kill you and then feed on your corpse. Norway was ready to say, look, hey, man, we taking out Germany. Yeah. Hey, you know what? There's money in it for me. I'm down. I'm down. They didn't even hesitate. They didn't say, oh, time out now. Germany's my friend. Why we can't do that to a friend? They were all over it. So what do we know now? The German people now have to take a look at something. They have to look at their government and ask a question. Does this government in any way, shape, or form represent us? They look at Annalena Baerbock, and she's out the next day. This comes out, she's out there today. We must get Sweden and Finland in NATO so we can strengthen the NATO alliance. She ain't even flinched. She didn't even stop. She didn't say, time out, we got to think about this. So here's what the German people have to know. She ain't representing us. She's not. She already knows the truth. She knows that this is not a defensive alliance, and she knows that this group does not act in our best interest, and she knows they attacked us. And she's just looking away saying, shh, don't say nothing. Keep going. Keep doing what we're doing. She don't work for them, and she does not have Germany's best interest in her plans, in her mind. So the German people, as they learn, yeah, some of them will be brainwashed, but within that group, this is going to permeate. More and more people are going to start questioning. There's no way out of that. And as Seymour Hersh has said, this is only first base. There's more coming, and I suspect it's going to be nasty. One of the things that we've heard is there were 8 bombs and only 6 of them blown up. Well, that means there's a couple of them down there, doesn't it? That means somebody can go down there and go looking for them. Why aren't they looking for them? How come Sweden and Denmark aren't like, hey, there's a couple more. We got to go find them. We got to find the real killer. You know, like OJ, we're looking for the real killer. Sweden and Denmark. Why didn't the U.S. call right away? Hey, oh my God, whoever did it, there may be extra bombs. Oh, go look right away. Or the U.S. could say, well, that's absurd. There's no, but what Hersh doesn't know what he's talking about. Here's what we say. We want an independent, the UN, to go down there and search for those 2 bombs. Because we didn't there's nothing there. We didn't, bombs, Raytheon, with timers on them for, no. We have no idea what you're talking about. So you guys go right ahead and look. They didn't say that, did they? Why? Because they know good and stinking well those 2 bombs are still down there. There's still evidence there that would prove Hirsch's assertions. And nobody's asking to go look, are they? Nobody's saying, wait a minute, Hirsch said there's 2 more bombs down there. I think we can send somebody, we can send a underwater drone or whatever the case may be to go down there and inspect them, even if they're afraid they're going to blow up. Take pictures of them, get the information off of them, send a drone down and get all the info up and come back up, right? You notice that the U.S. isn't saying that. Sweden, Norway, Denmark, even Germany's afraid to say it. Germany doesn't know what to do because the German government knows they're afraid of being exposed now. It's possible that there are people in the German government, and Annalena Baerbock may be even likely, that people in the German government were involved in a terrorist attack against their own country. You want to talk about a quisling government. You want to talk about traitors. I'll put it to you like that. In a lot of countries, you can be executed for that. You can be executed in a lot of countries for literally, and I'm against the death penalty. Maybe not Germany, I don't know. But probably not. They probably don't have the death penalty. You can probably get life, though. A lot of countries, you can get hanged or the firing squad for being involved with a foreign power to facilitate an attack on your own country. That's considered a traitor. If there was any Germans from the government involved, that's what they did. They were traitors. So the Germans got a problem, and they ain't getting out from under this one easy because it's leaking out, and it ain't over. And so Seymour Hersh is going to keep leaking, brother. There's a hole below the waterline, and there ain't no way for the Schultz government to get out from under this. There's only one thing that Schultz can do: say, I didn't know, and I'm going to start looking into it. And whatever I find, we're going to be open and honest. The problem is the U.S. would attack him and crush him and tell him to keep his mouth shut or else. Bad news for you. You might find the same bomb under your car, buddy. So Schultz has to be petrified because he knows that his master's voice is in Washington, D.C. And his master's saying, don't touch it. You know we damn did it. Of course we did. We have the authority to do it, and you have no say. You have no say. It has been exposed in Europe, and there are people all over Europe. You see, the ruling elite, I've made this point already many times. The ruling elite know what their job is. They know they don't work for the people of Europe. They know good and damn well that they work for the globalist cabal. You think, look, Emmanuel Macron worked for Rothschild Bank. You think this guy don't know what time it is? Do you think he really thinks that he is the leader of France? No, he knows what time it is. He knows what he's doing. He knows who he works for, but he's got to hide it from his people. The problem is this act made it nigh impossible. Yeah, are there still some sheep in Europe? Plenty of them. I'm just saying, this thing leaks, it makes it very, very difficult for the European leaders to maintain the facade that NATO is a defensive alliance that's used to protect them from Russia, that they are working for their people, that these countries are sovereign, independent democracies, and that the people of these countries choose their own leaders. There's going to be more and more people who wake up and say, it's obvious that ain't true. And that is a problem when people wake up from that dream. You got a big problem historically. Now let's come home to Washington. Let's come home to Washington, D.C. You notice something. There are people that run their mouths. There's, the squad and Bernie Sanders. I used to be a big Bernie fan. His ideology was closer to mine, right? A lefty. And I was like, yay, Bernie. But I realized something about Bernie. He's a fraud. I like Bernie, fine. He just came out with something and said, we need to pay teachers $60,000 a year. It's a reasonable bill. I think teachers should be paid fair. But here's what I would ask about Bernie. The Republicans have the House of Representatives now, and it ain't getting through. What if he wanted that through? If he truly wanted it through, what would he have done? Strategically, just before the midterm elections, when the Democrats needed teachers and unions and all that stuff, he'd have put that out in September, and he'd have forced the Democrats' hand, and they'd have had to push it through because midterms were coming up. If he wanted it to happen, wouldn't he? He would have used a political strategy. And if I know that, and I ain't been on Capitol Hill since 1837, like Bernie. If I know that, then Bernie knows it. So Bernie's putting it out now, knowing that the Republicans will kill it, that it'll go nowhere. It's performance, nothing more, nothing less. But there's a performance we ain't getting from Bernie. We ain't getting from the squad. We're not getting from the so-called progressives of Barbara Lee. And that's the performance to say, I got to question this. Now, these are the people that when Trump said, I think Biden's up to no good in Ukraine, and I'm going to call Zelensky and ask for a investigation, they impeached Trump. Now, I think it's pretty clear that Biden was up to no good in Ukraine. And I suspect that's why Trump was impeached. But these so-called lefties went along with it. They went along with it. Okay, let's impeach Trump. And anybody who didn't was attacked. Now, could there be a more impeachable offense? Well, according to the assertions and the allegations that we have, Joe Biden, the president of the United States, conspired to get around his duty to advise Congress of something that he was doing, that he committed an act of war against an ally, that there were discussions knowing that it was an act of war and knowing that he was accountable to tell Congress, and he didn't do it, that we know of, that he didn't formally do it. Well, that's big one there right now. That's clearly an impeachable offense. Not a word out of Congress for two reasons. Number one, it appears that there was a number of congressional members that either supported him or even went as far as egging him on to do it, suggesting that he did it, and then celebrating afterwards. So this wasn't just a Biden neocon thing. It was a congressional neocon thing too. So Congress can't go after him because they are all cheering for it. The problem also is they can't go after it because to go after this, what are you arguing? If you look at this and you say it's wrong, you say, but Joe Biden, you shouldn't have done it. Then the question becomes, why? Why shouldn't he have done it? Well, you got two choices, and they're not mutually exclusive. There are two choices that could be should be concurrent, shall we say? And that would be number one, because you have a duty to, because only Congress congressionally can declare war, and this is an act of war. Number two, because it's an act of war against an ally. You're conspiring against an ally. And I mean, under international law, under the UN, you're not allowed to do an international, an illegal act of war and aggression against another country. In this instance, one could argue at least at minimum two countries. So there's any number of reasons why you shouldn't do this. The problem is this is at the foundation of American exceptionalism, of American empire. The foundation is the empire, the hegemon, can do anything it wants, anytime it wants, and it can use any manner of coercion, physical, economic, whatever it chooses, against anyone, threats, violence, against any entity in the world it chooses. And if you start to ask, wait a minute, we can't use coercive violence against our allies in Europe, then you have to start questioning, where can we use coercive violence? And the U.S. can't ask that question. Congress can't ask that question because there is no coercive violence that the president will move for that they're going to say no to. So they can't. They can't address that because that's at the foundation of empire. Now, the problem they have now is there are so many people worldwide. There are people in this country, tremendous amount of people in this country who are going to be putting pressure on their respective members of Congress. We're going to say, wait a minute, we got a problem here. Why are you keeping your mouth shut? We've already seen where there was a guy, Richie Torres, I believe, in the Bronx or Brooklyn, I think the Bronx, and some of his constituents, excuse me for yawning, there's a video on, what is it? On Twitter, where some of his constituents are in a meeting, yelling out, saying, "What are you going to do? Are you going to investigate this attack on Nord Stream?" And the guy is befuddled. He knows he can't say that, he can't do it. And Richie Torres, the member of the House of Representatives, is saying it's being investigated by the Europeans. Well, wait a minute. The potential crime here is that Joe Biden was guilty of high crimes and misdemeanors. Why would the Europeans be looking at that? And the act of attacking another country, the Europeans, we ain't getting nothing from them. But you know what's interesting? And that is the US is going after Julian Assange for something he did in Europe. So in that instance, they're saying we have jurisdiction over Europe when it comes to Julian Assange. Now, when someone says Joe Biden did something and attacked someone in Europe, they say the Europeans are looking into it. Well, why aren't the Europeans looking into Julian Assange? Why does Julian Assange need to be extradited to the US? You're not going to argue that the Europeans are looking into that too. Again, that's the problem with this act. It exposes these kinds of contradictions. When you say the Europeans are looking, think about this. Let's talk about Assange real quick. What is he accused of? How the hell is Joe Biden going to prosecute Assange now? Assange is guilty of espionage. What did he do? He let Biden's he let information out about the U.S. War crimes, right? Classified information. Are they going to arrest Seymour Hersh and charge him with espionage too? First of all, Julian Assange is not even an American citizen, but Seymour Hersh is. So, are you going after Hersh? Are you going to charge him? Are you going to say he let out state secrets? He let out classified information? Or are you going to maintain the argument that it didn't happen? Is Congress going to say we need to look into whether it happened? They can't, because it's at the foundation of hegemony. We can use coercive violence against anybody we choose. Congress in an empire does not have the authority. Now, in the Constitution, they not only have the authority, they have the duty to conduct oversight over the intelligence community, over the military, over the executive branch, over the legislature. They have a duty for oversight in the Constitution. But in the rules-based international order, which is an unjust order of hegemony, not only do they not have the duty, they don't have the authority to say a damn word to the president. You see, in this instance, the president is not a president, he's an emperor. And his power doesn't come from the people. It comes from his donors, it comes from the oligarchs, it comes from the machine, the world globalist machine. That's where his power comes from. And the Congress really has no say over this thing. And that's going to be revealed too. As people say, are you going to investigate? More and more, you're going to get cries for investigation. And the truth is the Congress can't investigate. They don't have the authority to do it under the rules-based international order. They only have the authority under the Constitution. And the Constitution does not apply to the US government anymore. It's over. Over. There is no Constitution. So what happens? This incident exposes that the Congress is both unable and unwilling to exercise oversight over the judicial branch. That's what it exposes. It exposes that NATO is a lie and a fraud, that NATO is an organization that the United States uses so that it can maintain power of attorney over its vassals in Europe. It exposes that its vassals in Europe have no autonomy and no sovereignty, that they live. You want to talk about democracy versus authoritarianism? Is the United States, that we believe in German democracy? If we believed in democracy in Germany, we couldn't possibly blow their pipeline. Again, the argument, what is Joe Biden going to do now? Have his annual autocracy versus democracy meeting? You know, people are going to be everywhere saying, you got to be kidding me, Joe. Are you inviting the Germans? What's the point? So they created a mess for themselves. This is something that a lot of people are going to reflexively, based on Western culture, reason out and say, no, Garland, you're wrong. They'll just get away with it. They always get away with it. That's what people always say until they get caught, until they fall. In fact, the U.S. empire is collapsing, and this is just another part of the collapse. It's all perfectly natural. And I can't tell you how I know, but intuitively I know this is a big one, brother. This is a big one. Anytime you expose a reality over a false paradigm, it destroys the paradigm, and it forces people out into the real world. So as long as I say I'm the best cook in the world, I'm the best cook in the world, That's fine. And you believe it and everybody believes it. And then people come over and they say, okay, here's the ingredient, Scarlett. We need you to cook something, but I don't know how to cook. I'm exposed. And at that point, not only do they know that I can't cook, they know that I'm a lying sack of crap. And everything about me is exposed, not just my cooking skills, but my trustworthiness, right? All of that stuff is exposed. There ain't no way to get it back. You can't reason your way out of that one. And that's where we are now. There ain't no reasoning their way out of this. That's not going to happen. And I'm not saying that because I'm reasoning myself into this feeling, because it's a feeling, because it's an intuition. And thank goodness I don't study. I thank goodness that I do not study the non-existent philosophy of Zen, because there's no one to study it. And since that's a reality that doesn't exist, that means that I can use my intuition and say, there's something rotten in Denmark here. This one, they ain't getting away with this one. This is, anytime you expose reality, you got to deal with reality. That's it. When reality asserts itself, and reality sooner or later always asserts itself. So, let me say this. This is a phenomenon that I've seen. And again, it's an intuitive phenomenon. I really can't put it into words very well, but I've seen it more times than once, having worked in law enforcement. And seen, let's face it, when I started, it was far from just in law enforcement. People just did whatever they wanted, promoted whoever they wanted, screwed over whoever they wanted. If you were the chief of police, you just had total power back then. And I saw some chiefs of police do lots of terrible things and mistreat people and give their buddies promotions and all the things that you shouldn't do. But they were discreet enough about it, and people didn't like it. But they said, this is the way it works. The superintendent's going to protect that's his boy, and he's going to promote him because that's his buddy, hunting buddy, fishing buddy, whatever. Who looked out for who was a patron of who. You knew how the game was played. You didn't like it, but you understood it. And along came another chief, and he was a bastard. He was something else, and he was unapologetic about the way he treated people and about how arrogant he was. And he did any and everything he wanted to out in the open. And that's what blew the lid off of it. And he ended up fired, and the department ended up changing because of his arrogance, because he was so out in the open with it. I've seen this dynamic before. When somebody comes to power, and in this instance, it's the neocons and Joe Biden, right? All of these things that they were doing around the world, they were fairly discreet and a little more subtle. They were terrible, horrible, and evil, but they were a little discreet and at times subtle. And now come the knuckle dragging apes in Biden and Newland and Sullivan and Blinken. Knuckle draggers come in, and now they're like, we'll do any damn thing we want. We don't care. Don't you know who we are? And they come out and they say, Germany, you'll do what we're told. Nah, we don't want to do what you're told. Oh yeah, watch this. Boom. And then they just walk away. And when people in the deep state say, guys, we've been around in this game a lot longer. You guys are new to this power game. We're in this power game. You can't do this, because if it happens, we're all going to get burnt. Please don't do this. This is really, really stupid. And they say, shut up. We're in charge. And they say, okay, you better keep your mouth shut if you're going to do it. Because, man, if this gets out, our goose is cooked. And they're like, yeah, sure, whatever. Hey, everybody, guess what? We're doing it. Shut up. I'm in charge. And those people got furious. And they said, we've been here a long time. You don't want to listen to us? And now we could go down the ship with you, and you guys are dangerous. We're frightened of you. You're going to blow up our whole game plan here. We've got this powerful machine, and you're taking it to pieces. We'll see about that. Didn't Chuck Schumer say the deep state has 7 ways from Sunday to get you? And now these morons have pissed off the deep state, and there's going to be hell to pay. I can feel that intuitively. There's going to be hell to pay. And I think they named them. They have told you who they have the crosshairs on. They have told you who their targets are. Blinken, Sullivan, Biden, Newland. Let's see what happens. I don't think it's going to be pretty. But it is going to be pretty for me, because I don't believe in the rule-based order. I believe in a system of justice. All righty, we're going to see if we got some super chats. Don't look like we we got a super chat. Maybe the only one for the day. And Basil Bejkov says, I agree 100% with the Warren Commission report that Kennedy died of natural causes. There you go. That guy just slipped on a banana peel, I'm sure. I think that's how Kennedy died, wasn't he? Slipped on a banana peel. All right. I think we got one super chat, and one is plenty. All right. We're going to Rockfin. We're going to Rockfin. And thank you, Juliet Leak. I certainly appreciate that. Let's read a couple things. Biden has no morals or ethics. He's a political prostitute. True. Garland, read the Durham memo to the Tsar. Replace UK with USA and it still works. Over 100 years ago, the UK recognized that their hegemony relied on making sure that Russia and Germany never ever allied to each other. Our chickens have come home to roost. Just as Agent Orange dioxin damaged Vietnam's kids with defects, we now face the same issues in Ohio due to burning vinyl chloride. Sweden probably removed the 2 leftover bombs during their investigation. Yeah, good point. They may have. I think that's it. Let's look and see if we got a couple more things. The cat's out of the bag on the pipeline, but doubt there will be consequences. It's going to take some exceptional individuals to actually hold anyone accountable. See, that's what I said. My reasoning mind tells me that. My intuition mind tells me something totally different. If I just reasoned in my way through it, I'd say, yeah, they're going to get away with it. They always do. But I got a feeling. And I have learned to go with that feeling and intuition and try to figure it out, but it don't matter. We will see. I got a feeling and intuition. This is going to go real bad. Real bad. Let's look at this. Hero Joe Biden shot down my falcon. My falcon loved chewing gum. Biden with his cape stepped out of the UFO, sniffed the feathers of my falcon. The bird ballooned his gum, and Biden blew him up. That's quite interesting. Great show. Depopulation. Conspiracy theory. Biden has shamed the U.S. Navy. Russia needs to get Sarmat deployed. Russia's not letting this one go. The use of fear to gain obedience is the oldest form of mind control that's been in use since the beginning of man's recorded. What the authority does not use it today, there is none. All right. All right, everybody. I think that's it. Looks like that's the last super chat. Thank you, everyone. Seriously, what consequences did anyone pay for vaccine mandates and the vaccine injuries, even when we now know they didn't it for the money? Here's the thing about it. If you look at things from a perspective, again, the Western perspective is like this. Hey, man, it's been 6 months already and nobody paid. If you look at it from the Zen and look at, for instance, how many things do you look at and you say, the Treaty of Versailles, how did that work out? It took 20, 30 years to figure out, to look back and say, oh my God, the Treaty of Versailles, as a result of that, this happened and this happened and that happened. What we tend to do in the West is somebody does something and next week we go, nobody paid. See, they got away with it. I mean, it happened last week and nobody's paid a price yet. I told you they're all getting away with everything. That is the Western way of reasoning if it didn't happen now and immediately. So I understand how you're saying, did anyone pay for it? How long's it been? How long's it been? Has it been 10 years? Tell me 5 years from now. Tell me 10 years from now what the results of that are. We don't know. Next. Subbed on Patreon. Thank you. Thank you very much. Dug it up. So I understand people want it to happen now, but that ain't the way the universe works. And I think this thing, what I had said a couple weeks ago before this came out, I said, let me tell you something. I said, 10 years from now, if we should all make it, and you read the books. I said this before this happened. The attack on Nord Stream will be a central focus. This is what kills NATO. And see, here's the thing. It's a poison. It's not going to kill NATO overnight, but it has exposed the truth about NATO. So NATO can't survive that. NATO can't survive this. I ain't saying NATO's going away in a day or an hour or a month, but I'm telling you, NATO cannot survive this but so long. It's a poison. I suspect CIA hired Seymour Hersh to leak U.S. involvement to provoke Russia to a response like Pearl Harbor so we could go to war, like going to the bar to pick a fight. Yeah, well, I don't. But, yeah, that's great. I'm glad everybody has something they believe. Soon there will be Hungarians glorifying Nazi Miklos Horthy. You think it's essential Russia wins in order to stop the American crimes around the world, for example, crimes in Palestine? Let me say this. I know Russia's going to win because Russia's not going to stop fighting until they win. Russia ain't going to stop fighting next week, next month, 10 years from now, 20 years. Russia is never going to stop. The West, it's not existential to the West. So the West is not going to hold on to this. They're trying to find a way out now. Russia ain't looking for a way out. The West is. And the West is like, yeah, we got to go after China in 2 years. That which means that's the giveaway. We got to get out of this thing. We got other people. We got other wars to start. Russia ain't trying to go nowhere. Russia ain't in no rush. They're in no rush whatsoever. It's existential to them. They will stay here. They will continue to do their thing as long as they can. The question is, when this is over, what is NATO going to even look like? What is the U.S. going to look like? What is the U.S. foreign policy and military going to look like when this comes out? What is the U.S. coalitions and diplomatic coalitions around the world? What are they even going to look like after this? After this will be the mother of all debacles. So what I can tell you is this: it doesn't matter whether it's essential for Russia to win, which it is. Russia's never going to stop fighting in there. The bottom line is the question is this: will Russia ever stop fighting? No. Will Russia continue to escalate if they need to? Yes. Can the U.S. and NATO, as their coalition crumbles, continue to fight forever in there? No. No. So bottom line is this: Russia's going to fight until it's over, and they won't stop and they can't. So that's the way I see it. All right. It has integrity. Hirsch, I don't know. USA will look like Ohio. We already did. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. Did I miss anything? I think that's it. Last but not least, you know what I got to say. I will finish out with my spiel. Follow me on Twitter. Follow me on Telegram. Follow me all around the internet, wherever you can. Patreon, if you can do $5 or $3 or $100 a month, whatever you can do on Patreon would be highly appreciated to help the channel. PayPal, you see that scrolling across, garlandin@gmail.com. All this stuff is on the show notes. Buy me a coffee is always good. It's buymeacoffee.com/GarlandNH, and of course Cash App. And last but not least, make sure Rockfin is a free speech platform, which I'm on Rockfin, rockfin.com. You see that, ROKFIN.com/Garland Nixon. Please, everyone, A, hit the like button here, but B, go be a member on Rockfin. Rockfin's great because there's no advertisements. You just watch Rockfin, no advertisements. So it's great. It doesn't cost anything to be a member. Now, I'll finish by saying this. People do ask, well, how's Rockfin stay in business if it doesn't? I mean, how do those guys eat? I mean, for God's sake, they're not doing advertisements. They do prescription. They do a subscription service. Every content creator, which I am, we do one show per week at minimum, but at least one show per week for subscribers only. And mine is every Wednesday from 9 to 10 with the one and only Scott Ritter. So it's well worth it. But that's the only one I do that's for subscribers only. All the rest of the week is for anybody to watch. All my other stuff. So even if it gets censored here, you can go watch it on Rockfin. And anytime you can watch it on Rockfin, because you're not going to get any, if you're going to watch it other than live, you're not going to get any advertisements. So Rockfin's great. If you want to become a subscriber on Rockfin, $14.99 a month. But if you sign up for a year, they knock off a couple months and it comes out to $9.99 a month. So that's good. So if you can become a subscriber on Rockfin, if you can't, just sign up. You'll get everything. You just won't get the full show with Scott Ritter. The subscribers only show once a week, one show, but you'll get everything else. So it's well worth becoming a member on Rockfin. ROKFIN.com/Garland Nixon. Thanks a lot, you all. I'm out.